Your soulmate chosen you, you just don't know it yet. My beloved child, something has already shifted behind the scenes, and the most surprising part is that you were never supposed to notice it this early. There is a reason certain moments have recently felt different, as though an invisible chapter is quietly turning before your eyes. Stay with this, because what appears uncertain from where you stand may already be settled somewhere else. Your soulmate has been facing a choice they could no longer postpone, and while you may still be wondering where you stand, their heart has been moving toward an answer. That answer is you. Not because everything has been perfect. Not because every question has disappeared. They chose you because something about your presence continued to remain meaningful even when distance, silence, or uncertainty tried to make everything seem complicated. And here is the strange part. You may be the last person to realize what has happened. There was a moment when your soulmate stopped asking, "What if?" and began asking something completely different. What would my future feel like without this person in it? That question changed the entire direction of their thoughts. Don't skip what comes next, because this is where the hidden decision begins to reveal itself. They started remembering details you probably assumed they had forgotten. The way you understood things without needing endless explanations, the calm energy you brought into certain moments, and the authenticity that made you impossible to replace with a simple distraction. They compared possibilities. They imagined different paths. Yet somehow, their thoughts kept returning to the same place. You. And each return made one truth harder to ignore. Choosing you was no longer about an emotional moment. It was becoming a vision of what they genuinely wanted ahead. But there is another layer you haven't seen yet. Your soulmate may not have announced this choice because they are trying to understand how to bring their inner decision into the real world. Think about that carefully. Sometimes the biggest decisions arrive quietly before they become visible. A person can choose a direction internally long before they take the first obvious step toward it. That may explain why certain signals have seemed confusing. One moment there appears to be movement, another moment everything becomes quiet again. But silence does not always mean nothing is happening. Sometimes it means someone is gathering the courage and clarity to make their next move meaningful. Stay a little longer, because their hesitation may not be about whether they want you. It may be about how much this choice could change their future. And this is where everything becomes more interesting. Your soulmate has begun seeing you differently. Not as someone who simply entered their story, but as someone connected to the version of themselves they are becoming. Something huge is waiting for you, because there is one realization they have not expressed yet, and once you understand it, many confusing pieces may suddenly fit together. They discovered that choosing you also meant choosing honesty, growth, and a future that could no longer be built around pretending not to care. What if the uncertainty you have been watching is actually the final distance between a private decision and a visible action? You just don't know it yet, but the choice may already have been made. And what comes next could reveal exactly why their heart kept returning to you when every easier path told them to look somewhere else. Something unexpected happened inside your soulmate's mind when they finally stopped searching for reasons to resist what they already knew. They began looking at the future differently. Not through temporary emotions, not through other people's expectations, but through one quiet question: who feels real when everything else becomes uncertain? And somehow, your presence kept becoming the answer. Stay till the end, because the reason behind their choice goes much deeper than attraction or curiosity. They noticed that when they imagined their happiest future, you appeared naturally inside it. They didn't have to force the picture. They didn't have to convince themselves. You were simply there. And that realization surprised them more than you might imagine, because suddenly they understood that choosing you wasn't about chasing something exciting, it was about recognizing something meaningful that had already been growing. Here is the detail you were never meant to see this soon. Your soulmate has been mentally replaying certain moments between you, but they are noticing things now that they completely missed before. A sentence you once said carries a different meaning. A small gesture suddenly feels important. Even moments that seemed ordinary have started looking like clues pointing towards something bigger. Don't skip this part, because one memory in particular changed their perspective. They remembered a moment when you could have acted differently, yet you remained genuine. That became proof in their mind that what they felt around you wasn't built on appearances. And when someone begins imagining who deserves a place in their tomorrow, authenticity becomes impossible to ignore. Your soulmate realized they weren't searching for perfection. They were searching for someone whose presence still felt meaningful after the excitement became quiet. That is where you became different from everyone else. Now watch how the story shifts. Their choice created another question: what happens next? Because choosing someone privately is one thing. Allowing that choice to reshape your actions is something entirely different. Your soulmate knows they cannot remain forever between realization and expression. Something huge is waiting for you, and it begins with the fact that they are becoming less interested in hiding what matters to them. They are thinking about conversations they once avoided. They are reconsidering decisions they thought were final. They are beginning to understand that a meaningful connection cannot move forward through guessing alone. If this message reminds you of someone or gives you a new perspective, you can share it, leave your thoughts, or subscribe and stay connected with what comes next. Because the next revelation is where their private choice begins turning into something you may actually notice. But before that happens, there is one final hesitation they must overcome. It isn't about choosing between you and someone else. That decision has become clearer than you realize. Their real hesitation is whether they can become the person capable of meeting this connection with the same honesty they now expect from themselves. Wait till the final moment of this story, because this changes everything. Your soulmate has chosen you in their vision of tomorrow, but now they are beginning to understand that choosing you also requires choosing courage, consistency, and truth. And somewhere inside that realization, a new decision is forming, one that could finally move from their private thoughts into the world where you can see it too. The next clue will not arrive the way you expect, because your soulmate's decision is beginning to change the smallest details of how they think about you. Something that once felt distant is becoming personal. Something they once questioned is becoming strangely clear. And here is what makes this moment important: they are no longer imagining whether you could belong in their future. They are beginning to imagine how that future could actually work. Don't skip this shift. It may sound subtle, but it changes the entire story. When someone moves from wondering about you to mentally making room for you, their choice has already crossed an invisible line. Your soulmate has crossed that line. You just haven't seen the evidence yet. A surprising realization followed. They understood that choosing you does not mean creating some flawless story where nothing ever becomes complicated. It means recognizing the person they would still want beside them when life becomes ordinary again. When there are no dramatic moments, no mysteries to solve, no perfect words waiting to be spoken. And somehow, when they pictured those simple moments, you remained. A quiet conversation. A shared plan. Two people encouraging each other toward something better. That vision affected them because it felt less like fantasy and more like possibility. Stay a little longer, because this is where their thinking became even more specific. Your soulmate started asking themselves what they would need to change so that you would never have to question their intentions. They realized that feelings without consistency can create confusion, and if they truly chose you, eventually their actions would need to carry the message their words had not yet delivered. Then came the thought they could no longer dismiss: what if I wait too long? Not because some countdown is controlling this connection, but because they finally understood that meaningful opportunities should not be treated casually. Something huge is waiting for you in this realization. Your soulmate knows you have your own path, your own dreams, your own future to build. They cannot assume you will remain exactly where they last understood you. And strangely, that awareness has made their choice stronger. They are realizing that choosing you means respecting your freedom rather than expecting you to wait. It means showing up clearly instead of sending endless mixed signals. It means becoming brave enough to let reality answer the question that imagination has been carrying. And now the hidden decision is approaching its most visible stage. Watch for clarity, not fantasy. Watch for consistency, not mysterious signs. Because when someone has genuinely chosen a direction, eventually something about their behavior becomes different. A conversation becomes more intentional. An effort becomes more consistent. A truth that once stayed hidden becomes easier to express. You might miss the turning point if you expect it to look enormous at first. Sometimes the first evidence is simply someone becoming unmistakably clear. Your soulmate may have already chosen you privately, but the next chapter is not about what they secretly feel. It is about whether they can transform that choice into something real enough for you to recognize. And when that happens, you may finally understand why everything seemed uncertain right before the answer became clear, but now the story reaches the point your soulmate could no longer avoid, because keeping a decision inside eventually becomes harder than expressing it. They have already imagined the possibilities. They have already questioned themselves. They have already tried to understand why, among all the directions their future could take, their thoughts keep circling back to you. And then something changed. They stopped asking whether this connection mattered and started wondering what they were going to do about it. Don't skip this moment, because this is where an invisible choice begins searching for a visible form. Your soulmate knows that if they continue saying nothing, you may never understand what has been happening behind their silence. And for the first time, that possibility matters deeply to them. Here is what makes their realization so powerful: they understand that you cannot read their mind. You cannot build certainty from hints, guesses, or moments that could mean 100 different things. If they have chosen you, eventually they must communicate that choice with clarity. Stay till the end, because this is the lesson quietly transforming them. They are beginning to recognize the difference between wanting someone and being ready to show up for them. Wanting is internal. Choosing becomes visible through effort, honesty, respect, and consistency. Your soulmate is asking themselves whether their actions have actually reflected what they feel. And the answer may have surprised them. There were moments when they could have been clearer. Moments when uncertainty spoke louder than intention. But instead of allowing that realization to push them backward, it is becoming motivation to approach the next chapter differently. Then another thought entered their mind, and this one changed the atmosphere completely. Perhaps you have been interpreting their silence as an answer when, privately, their answer was already you. Something huge is waiting for you beyond that misunderstanding. They are realizing that an unspoken choice cannot give another person the confidence of a spoken truth. That is why the next movement in this story is not supposed to be another confusing signal. It is supposed to bring clarity. And if these words are giving you a new way to think about your own journey, you can share them, leave your perspective in the comments, or subscribe so you can continue with the next chapter. Because what follows is not about chasing anyone. It is about recognizing when someone finally becomes ready to communicate what they have already decided. Before you go, hear this line carefully: your soulmate's choice does not remove your choice. That may be the most important revelation of all. Even if someone sees you in their future, you still deserve the freedom to decide whether their actions match what you want for yours. You are not meant to live inside endless uncertainty waiting for hidden feelings to become obvious. Watch what is real. Notice consistency. Notice respect. Notice whether their words and actions begin moving in the same direction. Because if your soulmate truly has chosen you, the strongest proof will not be a mysterious sign, it will be the clarity they bring when they finally step forward. And that moment could be closer than you realize, because the decision they once kept private is becoming increasingly difficult to keep invisible. Now comes the revelation that changes the meaning of everything before it. Your soulmate is beginning to understand that choosing you was never the final step. It was the beginning. For a while, they believed reaching that inner certainty would answer every question. Instead, it opened a completely new one. How do you turn a private realization into something another person can actually trust? Stay a little longer, because this is where their thoughts become more serious than before. They are no longer satisfied with imagining conversations that never happen or possibilities that never leave their mind. Somewhere inside them, a simple truth has become impossible to ignore: if you matter this much, you deserve more than uncertainty. And that realization has changed what they notice about you. They see that you have continued becoming your own person while they were trying to understand their feelings. Your life did not stop. Your dreams did not disappear. Your future continued moving forward. That matters, because your soulmate is recognizing that choosing you cannot mean expecting you to remain available forever while they decide when to become clear. Don't skip this part. Their respect for you may be exactly what pushes them toward their next move. They understand that a genuine connection should add something meaningful to your life, not leave you constantly decoding silence. So instead of wondering how to keep your attention, they are beginning to wonder how to deserve your confidence. That is a completely different kind of question. Then something unexpected becomes clear. The qualities that made them choose you were never the things you were trying hardest to display. It was your natural way of being yourself. Your independent thinking. Your ability to keep moving when answers were incomplete. Your refusal to become a different person simply to fit someone else's expectations. Something huge is waiting for you inside that truth, because your soulmate has realized they do not want a version of you shaped around them. They want the person whose individuality made this connection meaningful in the first place. And that realization is forcing them to look at themselves too. Are they ready to meet you as an equal? Are they ready to communicate instead of expecting you to guess? Are they ready to build something through mutual choice rather than imagination alone? Here is where the future begins separating itself from the past. If your soulmate steps forward, the real turning point will not be a dramatic declaration. It will be clarity. You will notice that you no longer have to interpret everything. Questions will receive answers. Intentions will become easier to understand. Effort will become something you can actually observe. Wait till the final moment of this journey, because one last truth remains: being chosen can feel powerful, but being mutually chosen is what gives a connection direction. Your soulmate may have reached their decision first, while you remained unaware. But the next chapter cannot belong to them alone. It will depend on what happens when their private choice finally reaches you, and you are given the freedom to make a choice of your own. There is one final piece your soulmate has been slowly discovering, and it may be the piece that explains why their decision stayed hidden for so long. They were waiting to feel completely ready. Ready with the perfect words. Ready with every answer. Ready with some flawless plan for what should happen next. But meaningful connections rarely arrive with a complete map. At some point, clarity requires movement. And your soulmate is beginning to realize that waiting for perfection could make them miss something genuine. Don't skip this moment, because their biggest transformation is not simply admitting that they chose you. It is accepting that they may have to step forward without knowing exactly how everything will unfold. For the first time, they are looking beyond the excitement of what could happen and thinking about what they could genuinely contribute. Could they bring consistency? Could they listen when something matters to you? Could they respect your goals even when those goals have nothing to do with them? Could they communicate clearly instead of disappearing behind assumptions? Those questions have become more important than any fantasy. Stay with this, because your soulmate has discovered something unexpected. The strongest reason they chose you is not that they believe you will complete something missing inside them. It is that being around the idea of you makes them want to become more intentional about who they already are. You represent possibility without demanding perfection. Growth without losing individuality. A future where two people can walk beside each other without either person becoming smaller. And now imagine the moment when all of that private thinking finally meets reality. It may begin quietly. Perhaps with a conversation that feels more sincere than usual. Perhaps with an effort that continues instead of disappearing after one moment. Perhaps with words that finally match the energy you have sensed but could never confirm. Something huge is waiting for you, but remember this: you never need to manufacture signs or force meaning into ordinary events. Let actions reveal intentions. Let consistency reveal seriousness. If your soulmate has truly chosen you, clarity will eventually become easier, not harder. The connection will move away from endless guessing and towards something both people can understand. So before this chapter closes, remember what you were never supposed to forget about yourself. Being chosen is beautiful, but your worth was never waiting for someone else's decision. You were already moving forward. Already becoming. Already building a future that belongs to you. And perhaps that is exactly what made your soulmate finally see you clearly. What happens next begins with a detail so small that you could easily overlook it. Your soulmate is no longer thinking only about the moment they finally tell you how they feel. Their mind has moved beyond that scene. Now they are thinking about the morning after the truth is spoken, the weeks after uncertainty disappears, and the kind of connection that could exist when there is nothing left to hide behind. That is the shift you need to notice. Don't skip, because choosing you has stopped being one emotional decision in their imagination. It has become a question about continuity. They are asking whether they can show you the same certainty tomorrow, next month, and far beyond the excitement of one unforgettable conversation. And something surprising emerged from those thoughts. They realized they do not want to impress you for a moment, they want you to understand them over time. That difference changed everything. Suddenly, grand words became less important than dependable actions. They began imagining what it would mean to remember what matters to you, to respect the direction you are building for yourself, and to become someone whose presence creates clarity instead of confusion. Stay till the end, because this is where the title becomes even more meaningful. Your soulmate has chosen you, but you don't know it yet because the version of their choice that matters most is still being prepared for reality. They know that telling you is easy compared with showing you. Then came a realization they hadn't expected. They cannot control how you will respond. For so long, their private world allowed them to imagine every possible outcome, but reality gives you an equal voice. And strangely, accepting that has made their feelings more mature. They are no longer thinking, how do I make this person choose me? Instead, the question becoming louder is, how do I show them who I truly am and allow them to decide? Something huge is waiting inside that change, because genuine intention does not need manipulation. It can stand in the light. It can communicate clearly. It can respect an answer even before knowing what that answer will be. Now the atmosphere around this story changes again. Your soulmate is approaching a point where staying silent may no longer feel comfortable. Not because some invisible clock is forcing them, but because their inner world and outer actions have remained separate for too long. You might miss the turning point if you are waiting for something dramatic. Look instead for simplicity. More openness. More consistency. A conversation that feels unusually intentional. A willingness to answer instead of avoid. These are the moments where hidden choices begin becoming recognizable. And before the next chapter opens, remember this carefully: do not put your own journey on hold waiting for someone else's private realization to become visible. Keep building. Keep learning. Keep becoming the person you want to be. If your soulmate has truly chosen you, they will eventually have the opportunity to meet the real you, not a version that spent all its time waiting. And perhaps that is the final surprise approaching this story. While they have been quietly choosing you, you have been growing into someone capable of looking at their choice clearly and deciding whether it belongs in the future you are creating. That decision will be yours. And when the moment arrives, everything that has remained unspoken may finally have nowhere left to hide. Then, almost without warning, your soulmate reached a realization they had never allowed themselves to consider before: maybe the next chapter does not need another sign, it needs a decision followed by action. For so long, they kept searching for the perfect moment, believing certainty would arrive like a brilliant flash that removed every remaining question. But now they understand something far more powerful. Certainty sometimes grows quietly through repeated truth. Every time they imagined moving forward, your name returned. Every time they questioned what mattered, your presence remained. Every time they pictured becoming more honest about what they wanted, somehow the path kept leading back toward you. Don't skip this, because they have finally stopped treating that pattern like coincidence. They are beginning to accept what it has been telling them all along. Yet there is a detail even they did not expect. Choosing you has made them look differently at everything they once considered important. The perfect timing. The perfect circumstances. The perfect way to explain themselves. Those things suddenly seem smaller than one simple question: will I regret staying silent about something that matters this much? That question has stayed with them. And each time it returns, their hesitation loses a little more power. Stay a little longer, because this is where their private decision starts creating momentum. They are not trying to rush toward you. They are trying to stop running away from clarity. There is a difference. One comes from impatience, the other comes from finally understanding what deserves attention. And here is the twist: they have begun wondering whether you already know. Perhaps something in their behavior became easier to read than they realized. Perhaps their attention lingered a little longer. Perhaps they remembered something about you that nobody else noticed. Perhaps there were moments when their carefully protected feelings almost became obvious. Something huge is waiting for you, because the person trying hardest to hide this choice may now be questioning whether they ever successfully hid it at all. But even if you sense something, sensing is not the same as knowing. Your soulmate understands that now. They cannot expect hints to carry the weight of an honest conversation. That understanding is preparing them for a different kind of courage. Not the courage of making some enormous declaration, but the courage of becoming clear without controlling the outcome. They want to approach you as someone who has made a choice, while remembering that you still have every right to make yours. Wait till the final moment, because that balance may become the strongest proof of how much their thinking has changed. They are learning that a real connection is not created by one person deciding the entire future. It begins when two people can stand honestly before each other and discover whether their paths truly point in the same direction. So keep your eyes on what becomes consistent, not merely what feels mysterious. If this hidden choice moves into reality, you will not need endless clues forever. Their intentions will become understandable. Their presence will become more deliberate. And the questions that once kept you wondering may finally receive the clarity they were missing. Your soulmate chose you before you knew it, but the next revelation is even bigger. Somewhere between their hidden decision and your unknown response lies a completely unwritten future. And they are beginning to realize that the only way to discover what that future could become is to finally stop imagining the moment, and move toward it. A completely different thought has now entered your soulmate's mind, and this one may finally break the pattern that kept everything hidden. They have started wondering what you believe about them right now. Not what they hope you believe. Not the perfect version they imagined in their head. What you actually believe based on everything they have shown you so far. That question created an uncomfortable realization. Perhaps their feelings became clear inside them while their actions continued telling you an entirely different story. Stay with this, because your soulmate is beginning to understand that you cannot recognize a choice you were never allowed to see. That realization has made them revisit moments they once considered insignificant. Times when they wanted to say more but changed the subject. Moments when they nearly showed how important you had become, then stepped backward because uncertainty felt safer. Now those memories look different. Don't skip, because there is a surprising reversal happening here. The very silence they once believed was protecting this connection may have been creating distance instead. And your soulmate knows they cannot rewrite yesterday. What they can change is what happens next. That is why their thoughts are moving away from "maybe someday" and toward a much stronger question: what can I make clear now? But something else has changed too. They no longer want to approach you carrying only emotion. They want intention behind it. Your soulmate has begun thinking about what choosing you would mean when the exciting mystery disappears and real life takes its place. Would they still listen? Still communicate? Still respect your ambitions? Still allow you to grow in directions they cannot predict? Something huge is waiting inside those questions, because instead of weakening their decision, reality is strengthening it. They are discovering that they do not simply want your attention. They want the possibility of knowing you more deeply while allowing you to remain completely yourself. And then came the realization that may become their turning point. They cannot ask you to trust what they feel if they are unwilling to show you who they are. So something within them is preparing to become more transparent. Not perfect. Not rehearsed. Just clearer. You might miss the turning point if you expect dramatic signs. It could begin with a straightforward conversation. A question they finally have the courage to ask. An effort that does not disappear after one day. A moment where you suddenly notice that they are no longer leaving you to interpret everything alone. Before you move away from this message, remember what makes the next chapter different from everything before it. Your soulmate's hidden choice is approaching the boundary where imagination can no longer carry it forward. Beyond that boundary, only action matters. They may have chosen you privately. They may have pictured you beside them in a future you know nothing about. But now they are realizing that the future cannot be created inside one person's thoughts. And perhaps that is why you still don't know they chose you. The story was never meant to end with their secret decision. It was meant to reach the moment when that decision becomes clear enough for you to see, evaluate, and answer for yourself. When that moment arrives, you will not simply discover what your soulmate wants. You may discover something even more important. What you want when the uncertainty finally disappears. And that answer could change the direction of everything that comes next.